Is there any chance that Lauri Markkanen actually gets better this season? Yeah, I think it might be the opposite. But in today's show, we're going to talk about the Utah Jazz, all of the action for them for the upcoming fantasy basketball season. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok, at redrock_bball, and on Instagram, at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. All right, we are talking about the Utah Jazz. If you haven't seen it, Damian Lillard was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks, and I did a whole show on that. It's come out earlier today. Go check it out. We're going to talk Utah Jazz, but first, an update on the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl warning.
Let's get it on, Gilly.
All right, we are getting towards the end of the entries for the bowl. I'm still sending out a lot. If you look at your league and go, man, there's only 3 teams there, don't worry. We're going to get it filled, and even if we have to push the draft back a day, that's fine. Again, remember, the drafts are slow. Slow drafts. $50 entry. Big prize pool at the end. $200 if you make it to the final 2 of your division. Categories or points. Draft order has not been set. You will get a specific email for your division that tells you your draft order. So draft order has not been set. It's going to be fun. Hope the guys that are in my divisions go easy on me, but it's going to be fun. All the rules are linked in the show notes below. That's the entry form plus a link to the show to the rules, which is included in the entry form. There'll be a secret question later on for you to answer to get your way into the pool of names to get in. We're going to have, I think we're going to get the 720 for categories, and I think we should get the 360 for points leagues. But there are more opportunities to enter a points league than there are a category league. So if you do want to get in, and you're worried about a position in a category league, you can try a points league entry as well. Let's talk about the Utah Jazz now, because they're a team that has, I think, quite a level of confusion, I guess, around their roster and their rotation still. If we talk about their schedule, it's nothing hugely to talk about here. 43 quality games, 13 back-to-backs, that's on the low end. That's the lowest, actually. 13 games with maximum weeks. Again, that's on the low end. Their playoff schedule goes 3-3-4 to end 24th of March, 3-4-4 for 31st of March, that's a maximum, 4-4-3 for the 7th of April, and 4-3-4 for the 14th of April, the final week of the season. Nothing major standing out there with that schedule for the Jazz. What are the pressure points? Last season, they outperformed expectations, and then after the break, they really started to tank. Lauri Markkanen was out, Walker Kessler was out, Jordan Clarkson was out with a finger problem. They traded Mike Conley, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, and got nothing back. They waived Russell Westbrook, who did come back in that trade. They just tried to be bad. They only ended up with the 9th pick. But there's going to be fewer teams trying to be bad this season, and they're absolutely not set with their number one superstar player at this point. They're not set. So Danny Ainge, I think, would have no issue with doing that again. There is a risk. And I think it's probably a little understated, the actual risk here of Utah maybe pulling some shenanigans down the stretch, although hopefully the new rule does limit that down the stretch somewhat. I said down the stretch too many times. The backcourt, I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea. I've heard so many reports. The Jazz want Colin Sexton to be their 6th man. Okay, I get that makes sense. The Jazz have no interest in Jordan Clarkson playing as a point guard. Okay, so that rules out Sexton and Clarkson together. It rules out Clarkson and Abaji together. Does it mean that Chris Dunn's going to start, or is he just out of the rotation? Or is the rookie Keontae George going to start? Or is absolutely not an NBA starting caliber point guard Taylor Horton-Tucker going to start? I honestly don't know. I can't figure it out at this point, and I'm not even sure that we get a full... Maybe we do, because last season, we saw Colin Sexton come off the bench in preseason, and Malik Beasley started and went, oh, this is weird. And the Jazz guys just went, no, this is what they're going to do. So preseason will be very interesting to see what they do there. The other pressure point is John Collins. He was pretty bad last season. What if he's not anymore? What if he's good? But what if he's also bad? And what if they don't value him as part of the future and they just limit what he does and they get Hendricks and Olynyk in there because of Olynyk's shooting and ball movement, two things that Collins isn't good at? How does Collins fit next to Markkanen and Kessler? Maybe he's just too good and they have to play in big minutes, or maybe he's not. That is something that I don't know the answer to yet. And that brings me to a list of, well, actually, not yet, it doesn't. I was going to say it brings me to a list of breakout players, but we're not there yet, because I've got to tell you about today's sponsor. It's DoorDash time. DoorDash does grocery. You've been trusting DoorDash with your restaurant food deliveries for a while, but now they can also do your grocery shopping. You're in a spot, you're out there, all your mates are over, you got a barbie cracking, and you go, oh, I know it's just a bunch of blokes out here, but maybe we get one vegetable, but you forgot the salads. Or you go into your cupboard and your carrot's got like fungus growing on it. That's not good. DoorDash, they can get it for you. You go into the app, you tell them, go to our local grocery store. I'll pick which one, but there's lots of good ones around. We'll support the local economy. Give me a bunch of carrots. What else can we put in this salad? Let's get a cucumber. Let's get a little bit of carrot and cucumber, a bit of tomato, put a bit of balsamic on it, and we'll load all that up into our DoorDash app. And if there's something not available, well, we just choose the substitute in there. Plus, there is the Dash Pass. Is it called Dash Pass? Yeah, it's called the Dash Pass membership that you can get a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders. So get 50% off your first DoorDash order, up to $20 value, when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout. It's a limited time offer and terms apply. 50% off, up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the code LOCKEDONNBA. Don't forget the code is LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. Big list of breakout candidates. Understand what I mean by breakout candidates, I'm sure you do. John Collins is not a breakout in the traditional breakout sense, in that he's not going to go back to being a top 15 player that he was in Atlanta. That's not going to happen. But in terms of where I projected him, I'm very modest on my projections because, as I said, what if, and I know the Jazz love what Kelly Olynyk does, what if they just don't think that Olynyk fits, or that Collins fits next to Kessler? What if he's a 24-minute-a-night player the way Vanderbilt was last season? But he could also go crazy and be a 33-minute guy and average 19 and 10 with 1.3 blocks. That's breakout candidate. Keontae George. I love grabbing him in the last rounds. If I was them, and I'm clearly not, I would start him just straight off rip. Like, Sexton's not a starting point guard. Abaji's not very good. Clarkson's not a starting point guard. Dunn is great as a defender, but you don't want him out there as a starter. Are you going anywhere? Like, Keontae's your guy to try at the moment. But he also might not. So I don't have him projected at 32 minutes, but if he starts opening preseason game, I'm all in. I'd grab him last round now just to see what happens. Last 2 rounds, round 12, whatever. I'll grab him. And then that leads me to Sexton, Dunn, and Abaji. It's really hard to know what they're going to do. So all of them have really conservative projections for me. Sexton, take him in the last rounds, because if he plays 30 minutes, he'll beat it. Dunn, if he gets the start, absolute top 100 option. Abaji, yeah, maybe not. But he's not a good permanent player at all. But if he is playing 32 minutes, then there is more utility in that. But I just don't know where those guys are going to fit. And there is an easy argument for any of those players to see larger roles than we might have expected at any point, really, or the way I expect it now. I did talk John Collins just then, but we're going to put him right under the lens. Was it a disappointing season for John last season? Yes, very clearly it was. Collins had significant issues, but there's a few things that I think we need to dispel about John. First of all, he was shithouse in points leagues, 125th in Yahoo, 127th in ESPN. His -1 head-to-head rank was 122. That was dreadful. Now, he was getting drafted around, let's have a look, I think it was around the 50 spot, and I am very confident, 100% confident, that last season I was out on that. I had no interest in drafting him there, and that turned out pretty well. Let's have a look. Yeah, his ADP was 57. Yikes. Yeah, that was crazy. So I was happy that I was able to be away from that. I thought he'd be better than he was, but I didn't think I didn't think he'd be good. So what did he average last season, Johnny? He only played 30 minutes a night, and over the final half of the season, he was down under 30. He averaged 13 and 6.5 rebounds. His peak back in 1920 was 22 and 10 with 1.6 blocks. he averaged 0.6 blocks a game over the final 24 games. His rebounds were down to 4.8 per game, with Capella and Okongwu getting all the center minutes. Over those final 24 games, he averaged 13 and 5. 0.6 blocks. But, the fake news media has also lied to you a little bit about John Collins. And I'll get into that in a second. Just be ready for it. You know what I'm going to say. Look at his usage. It was pretty bad. It was under 20 most of the way through the season. A couple of little spikes, but usually he just wasn't getting touches because Trey and DeJounte were getting everything. DeAndre Hunter was getting his shots. Bogdanovic would get his. And then part of the value, the way that Collins was able to be successful those years ago, was playing at center and getting rebounds and higher field goal percentage. And as soon as Clint Capella came across, we knew Collins was going to lose out. He did. And now he just continues to lose and lose and lose. So that usage is pretty poor. I think that his usage will be marginally higher this season, but I'm not going crazy on it. I've only got him projected 30 minutes a night because, again, I know that they want to use Kelly Olynyk. Now, you've got 96 minutes between the 4 and the 5 with Kessler, Collins, and Olynyk. Not sure anyone else gets minutes there, except what if Lauri Markkanen does play at the 4 some? Now, we'll talk about Markkanen more later, but if Markkanen gets any minutes at the 4, then those 96 minutes between those three guys gets cut down, and I would expect that Kessler gets 30 of the 96. Maybe you get 30 for Collins. Maybe you get 25 for Olynyk. That gives you 85. So that means Markkanen would have 11 minutes. And that's 0 minutes there for first-round draft pick, top 10 draft pick, Taylor Hendricks, which also seems a little silly. But Collins could easily play 33 minutes. He could. I'm just not projecting it at this point. His rebounds, as I said, were bad, and they just kept going down and down and down. Some really poor numbers, averaging under 5 a game over the final couple of months of the season. Does it become easier for him to grab rebounds playing next to Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen on the other side? I'd say no. But it's hard to be worse than 4 a game, 5 a game. I think he's a 7-8 rebound possibility, but he's not going to go back to those past double-digit rebound numbers would be my guess. What was the really interesting thing and where I said about the fake news media is everyone goes, well, the reason Collins sucked is his thumb was all rooted and he couldn't shoot. He was bad at threes. And yeah, when you look at the season numbers, he shot 29% from 3. That is 100% accurate, and there's no lies on that. He shot 62% from 2, which is actually up from the 59 he shot the year before. But have a look at this. Look at that 3-point percentage. He went over 33% from 3 in 5 of the final 7 weeks of the season, and ended the season going 39, 42, 44, 46. So the excuse of the finger being the problem is either overblown or his finger's fixed. It's not one or the other. I mean, it can't be both. It can't be, well, yeah, look, his finger's still a problem. He's not going to shoot this season because he shot well. So the finger's fixed, or he's just a bad and inconsistent three-point shooter. It's one of those. That's how I have to view this. Because if your finger was jacked up, causing those problems early in the season, and it might have been 18, 20, 17%, then it must have got fixed for him to shoot that well, or the finger wasn't the problem and he was just inconsistent. It's one of those two things. But again, be careful what you see, because over those final, say, 39 games of the season, he shot 34 from 3. The final 24 games, 35%. The final 15 games, 38%. That is really low volume, but it's still there. And it's because he shot 20% from 3 for the first 40 games that was able to make that overall season number look poor. Look at his -1 rank for the season. There's some solid-ish weeks, but just a lot of inconsistency. But again, it's probably not as bad as what the overall season numbers make it look like. This is where we start to get into a level of concern is the Darko DPM change graph. And over the last 2 seasons, he's been in decline. He is still rated as a positive player on Darko, which is great, but he's hitting that decline a little bit early. He's only 26. Is that the finger? Is that the fit? And I would argue that the fit doesn't change significantly because you're playing next to Kessler instead of Capella. How many center minutes he's going to... Well, maybe he does. Maybe he does get more center minutes here, and that helps in those minutes he plays. There is a possibility of that. But I don't think that the Collins issue is solely tied to the finger or solely tied to the fit in Atlanta. There are very easy arguments to make that without Trey and DeJounte there, he can get more touches. But Trae Young is also one of the best passers in the NBA and draws so much attention that Some of that is good, and the Jazz don't have that player. They don't have that guy who dominates the ball and sets it up for everybody. In fact, they might be the worst passing team in the entire NBA. I think that's very, very, very easily the case. Maybe Boston, but I think Utah has them covered. So it's not like, wow, Trey was just hogging the ball so much. Yeah, he does, but he's also an awesome passer. And Collins has to work out where he sits. This could be one I'm really wrong on, right? I don't feel super confident, but I'm not super in on John Collins this season. I just think that he's not necessarily getting 33 minutes. Does he get the blocks back? I would guess not with Kessler there. It just feels like things have dropped and the league sort of figured him out and he's lost confidence. Maybe this boosts it. I don't know. I'm just not fully in on this big bounce back from John Collins. The basketball index headshot plot. Oops, as the wrong screen comes up. Apologize for that. Let's bring it back. There we go. I've got a few of his teammates on there. Walker Kessler, Kelly Olynyk, John Collins is the face in the middle. Up in the top right corner is the big fella from Detroit, Alf Stewart.
Is that you, Mr. Stewart?
Well, who the hell else do you think it'd be? Get in here, you pair of flaming galahs.
And then there is Walker Kessler and Aaron Gordon down the bottom. What I've got on the graph is 3-point openness rating, and on the x-axis, the amount of roll man possessions in the pick and roll that they used. So we know that John Collins has been a devastating pick and roll and lob threat guy over the past of his career, and we know that he had issues with his shooting. So he sits in terms of openness of 3-point shot almost at 90th percentile. Isaiah Stewart, who's another guy with an iffy shot playing the 4, he was actually up at close to 100%. No one guarded him. And Kelly Olynyk somehow was able to get super open on this Jazz team with a big openness rating. Walker Kessler, don't worry about the 3-point shooting. And then Aaron Gordon, another guy with some offensive challenges, didn't actually have that huge openness rating on his threes. He didn't take very many. Maybe that's part of it. But what I want to look at here is that Walker Kessler and John Collins were both in about the 73rd percentile in pick and roll man possessions. They're going to be sharing the court together. Look at where Olynyk is and Kessler. There was a clear delineation between those two. Something is going to lose out between Collins and Kessler. They both can't be, I would guess, sitting in that same zone in terms of pick and roll possessions. So there's going to be an adjustment. Olynyk is more of a pop guy, obviously, that'll continue. But Collins and Kessler make things happen on the pick and roll. So if they're both on the court together and starting, which I expect, one of them is not going to be involved in pick and rolls as much. And I would guess John Collins would like to shift across to that Kelly Olynyk role. So it's going to come down to the field goal percentage is going to be based on 3-pointers, and he's not going to get as many, I don't think, shots at the rim, even as he got last season. I could be reaching on that. Absolutely. But I think it is worth noting where he sits there in comparison to Walker Kessler and the fact that he did shoot 29% from 3, but he was a very highly open 3-point shooter, and we don't, exactly know how that's going to move across into this upcoming season. Talking fantasy sleepers here, and I'm going to list the big fella Walker Kessler as one in Utah, and it's all based on numbers, right? It's all based on what his rankings and that are, because I've seen people go into round 3 for Walker Kessler, and that is one of the strongest no's you'll ever get from me. I just think the block numbers in traditional Z-score rankings get overblown, and you know that. I've got him pushed down quite a bit. My Durant metric, which applies those normalized transformations onto data, drops that down as well. And doesn't look great in that spot. But when he sits at a rank of 79 on ESPN and an ADP of 75, well, that actually does make him a sleeper. He's ranked at 52 on Yahoo with an ADP of 43 and a Fantrax ADP of 49. And while I don't think, that's not a sleeper at that spot, but it's not a complete overvalue. I did that Roto mock draft with Dan the other day, and I took Kessler in round 4 just to show the difficulties of building around him with his poor points, threes, assists, steals, and free throws. Like, he's bad at all of those things, and it does become hard. So I don't love him in that zone, but when I'm getting him in round 8 or round 7, you're able to build around it a little bit easier. So Kessler's a sleeper depending. Don't take him in 30s, probably not even early 40s. 50, sure, no problem. Round 5, I get it. I'd love to get him later, but there are other shot blockers you can get 40 spots later. Duran maybe, but Gafford is another one of those names that's always going to be available late. Mark Williams. And Kessler could lead the league in blocks, very simply. But is that valuable enough to take up high? Not really. But if you get him at 70s, yeah, it is. Absolutely. It's tremendous. So the question here for the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl about Walker Kessler, just answer this, just drop the number down below. How many minutes a game did Walker Kessler play last season? It is much, much less than you think. It's 23. So that's the question you drop in the entry form that is linked below. 23 for Walker Kessler's minutes per game last season. I don't actually think there's anyone massively listed as a bust on this squad. You've got the values of a lot of guys that are interesting. Again, if Kessler was going in the 30s, I wouldn't like that at all. That would look like a bust to me. I think Markkanen's ADP at 22 is almost definitely too high. But if he goes at 32, 33, then that's all right. These other guys, like Collins is going at 104. Now, John Collins' Fantrax ADP at 84 would probably qualify for a bust for me. But around the 100 mark, go for it. Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, Keontae George, they're all going really late. So no one really stands out as a bust. Let's actually talk about Lauri Markkanen now, because he does have that ADP of 22 on ESPN. Now, he was amazing last season, early on. He was really good, like a top 25 player. He averaged 26 points with 3 threes, almost 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 0.6 blocks, 0.6 steals, 50 and 88%. I was massive on him last season in the 60s, that it worked out way better than I could have anticipated, but things dropped off for him. And over the final 15 games, he was down from 50% shooting to 45% shooting. The usage spiked. It went from 26 to 32. But are we relying upon a 32 usage market in this season? With Clarkson, with Sexton, with Collins. I don't think he's going to get that much usage. He doesn't ever provide defensive stats, and he won't. That's just not going to happen. So if he stays at that 34, 35 minutes and gets 26, 27 usage, but doesn't shoot 50% because he was hitting his shots at an unbelievable rate, especially twos at 59%, I worry a little bit. I worry a little bit that, again, it's hard for me to see him besting what he did last season. And if he does, it's going to require 30% usage. And I'm just not sure that he gets that. If you think he's going to get that, I think we can all agree there is a significant risk of regression for shooting for Markkanen. But is there a chance that he's able to get that usage up and become that number one guy? Because who did they lose that was usage? Conley, Vanderbilt, Beasley, not really. Like, he just started to get more because Clarkson was out, because Sexton was out, and he was able to take more shots and do it that way. So, I don't know. There are just numerous concerns, I think, in terms of, and you're adding John Collins into the mix, in terms of Markkanen being able to continue that. Injuries, Taylor Hendricks and Bryce Sensabaugh did not play in Summer League. Hendricks is fine. Sensabaugh doesn't look like he's going to be ready to start the season. He's someone I'd really be watching in Dynasty Leagues. I really rate Sensabaugh. I'm worried about the knee, but you can get him for free, basically, in Dynasty Leagues at the moment. What's a trade that could happen? I don't think they should be looking to build around Colin Sexton. They should look to get some sort of real point guard. I would, 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000, try to get, guess who? Cole Anthony, Kobe White, Emmanuel Quickley. These are guys that you can plug in as your starting point guard, and I feel all right about it. Or maybe it's just Keontae George. But Sexton, I think, would have been a great option for the Bucks to have a crack at, but of course, they got someone significantly better in Damian Lillard, so that's probably not on the table for them anymore. Contract year players is quite a few. One of them's Olynyk. Could he be traded? I don't know. Chris Dunn, Horton Tucker, Sharmanich, Simone Fontecchio is a restricted guy. If Chris Dunn does start, he is a 12-team league player. If Horton Tucker does start, he might be, but I honestly think he's bad. He picked up the player option because he wasn't going to get that on the open market. He's inefficient. He needs everything tailored towards him in terms of run the show, all the usage to actually have any use because he's so inefficient. I just don't rate him as a player. But he is still really, really young. He's not even 23 yet. He's younger than Ochai Agbaji. He's almost 2 years younger than Colin Sexton. He's 6 months older than Walker Kessler. Like, he's still really young. I just don't rate him as a player. He's had a lot of time in NBA systems, and it hasn't really, I don't think, improved. As for Kelly Olynyk, he was a guy that I was massively in on last season as a late-round pick. Great upside. It turned out pretty good, but I don't see it this season. He's not going to start, but he could cut into John Collins. As I said, he's passing. He might be the best passer on this team. Shooting, he's not the best shooter, but he's not far off. And when you run the Collins-Kessler pairing, you would hope that might not work. If they're both running pick and rolls, someone needs to shoot in space, and your Markkanen can do it. But Olynyk was really key for this team. He is 32 though, and I wouldn't draft him, but I would keep a really solid eye on his overall role and see how it impacts. Because I think they'll go probably with a 3-man frontcourt, but maybe Hendricks slides in, and I would hope they would give him 10 to 12 minutes a night. They're not really going anywhere. As for Shamanic and Fontecchio, I don't think they're rotation players necessarily. Like I said, the rotation risk here is that Kelly Olynyk just plays more than we think, cutting into maybe Walker Kessler, but I doubt it, but more specifically into John Collins, which then limits maybe what Markkanen does at the 4, which might impact some of his 2-point efficiency as well. And then there's the guard platoon. Does someone win out, or do they just rotate guys and limit the minutes of players? Again, I'm not interested in drafting Ochai Agbaji, really. I would much rather draft Keontae George. I'd even probably rather have a crack at Sexton and Clarkson, and maybe even a Chris Dunn. I just think Agbaji needs a lot of usage to put up media. I'll tell you who Agbaji is. All right, it just came to me now. Ochai Agbaji is... I'm trying to think of a way to say it that doesn't sound completely rude. But he is, LDS Lonnie Walker? That's who he is, I think. A guy that can score okay. He's a much better shooter than Lonnie, but his impact on the stat sheet is marginal, and he probably needs a lot of things tailored around him to put up good numbers, and then if you do that, your team will be bad. That is very harsh on a bloke who is in year 2, obviously. He's 23 years old. He's not super young. I just have never seen it with him to develop into this great starting player, but I'm still willing to reserve a level of judgment on that. I'm just not willing to think that he's going to be great for fantasy this season. The guys that we want to watch in terms of minutes, Chris Dunn, Kelly Olynyk, Taylor Horton-Tucker. Because if Dunn or Horton-Tucker start, yes, they will be fantasy options because they put up numbers. And the same as Olynyk. Get him to 30 minutes and he's easily a 12-team guy. Getting there is tough. These are the per-minute monster players, though. What's the depth chart? At the moment, the guards, I've got no idea. But I'm putting Sexton and Clarkson as the starters. I really like getting Sexton in round 11, Clarkson the same. See what happens with some upside. And same with Keontae George. They're all willing. I'm willing to go with all of them there. Dunn's maybe a round 13 guy. Agbaji, deeper league player. But that's your guard depth. There's a lot of them, but who's standing out? Sexton, Clarkson, George, Agbaji, Dunn. Who's the best passer out of that group? Honestly, is it George? I don't know. I don't think they're going to start any wings. And I've got Horton-Tucker listed as a wing. You could count him as a guard. There's Bryce Sensabaugh, who's injured, and then there's Hauser and Zhuzhang. Wings is guys I classify as 2-3s. And I don't think Agbaji can really play the 3, but you could consider him a wing, maybe. No one there is super exciting, although I do like Sensabaugh for Dynasty. For the forwards, Lauri Markkanen's going to start with Fontecchio and Shamanic behind him. Look, again, that's part of the issue with the Olynyk and Collins stuff is if Markkanen does play the 4. He didn't really play any 4 last season. Remember that. Don't believe what Basketball Reference tells you. He didn't play really any 4. He was at the 3, and he's going to play the 3 again this season. But sometimes you'll get some minutes there. There's just not much depth behind him. And the bigs, there's a lot of guys here. Collins, Kessler, Olynyk. They're all going to play. Olynyk's more of a 14-team league guy, I think. Taylor Hendricks, I really, really like him long-term. I think he's a future top 50 player. Then there's Omer Yurtseven, who absolutely not. We're not drafting him anywhere. And Micah Potter on a 2-way. Yurtseven's one of those guys, again, that puts up those interesting numbers and people really, really start lifting that desk up and I've got to come really push it down hard and go, guys, it's not happening. This guy's bad at defense, and that's why he's not going to get an opportunity, I don't think. Durant and Bazemore. Durant downgrades Walker Kessler because of the blocks issue that I told you and the fact that he's just bad in so many different categories that it does make it quite challenging to build that strong team around him. Keontae George gets a boost, and I didn't really expect that. His shot selection, though, in college was He had some really hot games in Summer League. I'm not sure that he's a great passer. I'm sure maybe he is just sort of an in-between combo guard, and those big Summer League games maybe fooled us a little bit to his potential. But I just want to see them give him that crack when the guys ahead of him aren't particularly strong. For Bazemore actually loves Walker Kessler, and I think we're going to get Bazemore up on Basketball Monster in the next day, at least a preliminary version of it, and then the full customizable one hopefully coming pretty soon. Lauri Markkanen's a top 30 guy in Bazemore. Keontae's a top 120. Abaji is not top 150. He's like 170th, around that mark. And Taylor Hendricks is inside the top 160. And that is skewed because I just don't think he's going to play much this season. But if you want to go rebuilding, he jumps up to me to be probably a top 100 player. And that'll do it for me today, guys. Don't forget to follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. No Stitcher. Spotify. And on YouTube, thumb it up. Leave your comments down below. And the Odyssey app. I'm all over the place. I was up early, Lillard trade, Utah Jazz, and we're going to come back later on with a Washington Wizards preview. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.
JORDANCLARKSON